Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. In this video is to bring you a closer look at the Bommer number BB5044-545T-643. This is a hinge is what it is. And this is a good looking hinge too. Let's take a look at this. You might start to immediately say to yourself, well gosh, that looks kind of unusual. It is. Not unusual, it's uncommon. But boy, if you need it, this is the greatest solution to what you are faced with. What do I mean by that? This is a raised barrel hinge. Imagine a scenario where you have an out-swinging door and the wall condition literally comes up to the face of the frame. You would, in a standard application, have nowhere to fit the barrel of the hinge, and you need to tip the vertical axis of pivoting off and towards the center of the opening ever so slightly. And none of the mechanics, none of the geometry of the door change at all because this vertical axis of pivoting is shifted over, pardon me, that amount, which, that's substantial, about a ½ inch, but nothing changes at all. This is a ball tip hinge, and that's what the T means in the part number. It's a great looking hinge. This is what you'd see from the outside of your door. You have a elegant, regal set of doors opening out onto your patio, your landscaped patio. But the frame condition sucks up where the hinges would normally reside. That's where you go with a raised barrel hinge. So let's dissect the part number. First of all, BB from Bommer stands for ball bearing. On this hinge, there are 4 bearing packets. 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 of them. Okay. The 5044 means a number of things, and this is where I have to pull up my catalog. I know that it means raised barrel heavyweight, but let's dissect the part number so that you can understand how the number is created. So BB stands for ball bearing. I know that it is a heavyweight hinge because there are 4 bearing packets, and on a 5-inch tall, which we'll get to in a moment, that means the leaf thickness is 0.190, so it's a substantially heavier hinge than normal. A standard hinge is not this. This is a heavyweight hinge. A standard hinge would be 140 thousandths thick and give you only 2 bearing packets. But when you go to heavyweight, you'll get 4 bearing packets in there. So the BB stands for ball bearing. The 5 means 5 knuckle. You can see why they call it that. The 0 in the part number means it's a full mortise hinge. In spite of the fact that the vertical axis of pivoting is shifted over a little bit, when you mortise the leaves flush to the door and frame to bring them parallel, you have to mortise them. Otherwise, because there's a gap between these 2 leaves, because the swag of the hinge leaf that's applied to them. So when you bring the leaves parallel, when they're mortised, that's where that gap between the door and frame are going to come in. The gap between the 2 leaves when they are brought parallel. That's how we know it's full mortise. The 4, the first one, means raised barrel. Okay, you can see how that entire barrel is shifted off, shifted off this way, where it would normally be located right at the center of the 2 leaves. The second 4 means heavyweight, but also it means it's made of steel. Now we also know that it's made of steel because of the finish, and we'll get to that in a moment. This is a gorgeous finish. By the way, this is satin bronze. Satin bronze blackened is what it is. This is not satin bronze, this is blackened satin bronze. Gorgeous finish. I'm going to touch the magnet here without disturbing the finish. Made of steel. Okay, I know that because the 3-digit code of the finish, and we'll get to that again in a moment. Moving on through the part number, we have 545. That means that this hinge is 5-inch tall, and the height is the first dimension on hinges like this. Be mindful of that. 5-inch tall. This is an otherwise 4.5-inch wide hinge. I don't know what it will measure if we open it up completely. Those offsets are probably going to tamper with a 4.5-inch dimension ever so slightly. But it's right in that range. This is a 4.5-inch probably meant to be when they're parallel. This is a 4.5 inch hinge. Maybe not. But it is 4.5 inch. I'm not sure where they're measuring the 4.5 on such a hinge like this. You would want 4.5 inch wide when you have an 1.75 inch thick door. You would want 5 inch tall when you have an 1.75 inch thick door, when you have an especially heavy door. And given the fact that this client has ordered 5 inch tall and heavyweight and ball bearing, tells me that this must be a substantially heavy door, because a 5 inch hinge is noticeably more capable at carrying weight in terms of the door operation, how heavy the door can be, when compared to a 4.5 inch hinge. If you ever get into heavy doors, 150 pound plus, you really would be well served to start thinking about a taller hinge, not a wider hinge, because you don't want the width of the leaf to move those screw points out to such a situation where it's really too much hinge to stuff onto the edge of an 1.75 inch door, because you want to keep a 1/4 inch backside as well. So if you had a 2 inch door or a 2.25 inch thick door, you could get to a 5 inch wide hinge. But when you're dealing with 1.75 inch, you're going to be dealing with either a 4.5 inch hinge or a 4 inch hinge. That's normal as well. Okay. T, let's see here now. We have a T in the part number, 454T. That means ball tip. Ball tip is T. Gorgeous ball tips. Very substantial, very elegant. Other tips are available. Urn tip, steeple tip, obviously ball tip. Acorn tip. They don't list urn, but I bet that they can do it. Urn, steeple, ball, acorn, button tip. Button tip's the standard one. Then we get into the finish. 643. That's satin, bronze, blackened. That number, 643, specifically means that it is steel-based, which, of course, the second 4 in that part number does as well. And there is on our website a link to the BHMA finish chart that will allow you to see all the different codes for finishes. And a 3-digit number, it would be the Builders Hardware Manufacturers Association code for satin brass blackened when it's on steel. And I'm going to pull up the BHMA chart to tell you what satin brass blackened is when it's made of brass or brass bronze. That'd be US 11. Pardon me, that's the US number. US 11 would really be a 616 finish. So if you wanted satin bronze blackened and relieved clear coated, that's what it really is. Satin bronze blackened, relieved, clear coated. If you wanted that to be made of brass, well, you wouldn't have the 4 in the part number, nor would you have 643. You would have a 616 for the finish, but then to go back to our part number, if you wanted the same hinge made in brass, it'd be a BB5045. A 5045 rather than a 5044. And I'm going to show you where this chart is that I keep referring to at the end of the video. Screws are included in a complimentary finish, naturally. There is a link below this video to the cut sheet, which is really a template, and it's going to talk a lot about, or show a lot about, where you would use a raised barrel hinge, or at least show you the condition by which running that jam so that you're not permitting yourself room to install the hinge. But also, raised barrel hinges are used when you have the door inset into the frame, which could also be known as adding jam extensions. Let's say you've got residential construction, and this is really where raised barrel come up. Residential construction, and they order a 4 9/16 exterior jam, but the walls are 6 inch or 5.5 or whatever the case is. They add jam extensions. They don't throw the door and frame out and start over. They just add jam extensions. Well, the problem with that, it doesn't give you any room for the hinge because you've got an outswing door. And when you look at that cut sheet, you'll see precisely that condition in both a mortised jam leaf and a surface mounted jam leaf as well. Gives you the amount of the offset that 11/32 of an inch, something in that range. Other dimensional properties that they recommend for normal installation that you can review. You can see how the part number changes as the quantity of knuckles change. If you wanted a 3-knuckle hinge, you'd have that 8044, 8044. It becomes an LB. It's still a bearing type hinge, but it's called a lube bearing. Then you can see how that last digit changes as the base material changes. 4 for steel, 5 for brass, 6 for stainless base material. So Bommer can make this hinge in any configuration that you really need. On that cut sheet also are the locations of the hinge screws, so be mindful to measure that if you are replacing existing and want to be sure of what you're dealing with in terms of whether or not you'll have to dowel those original screw holes closed before you re-drill them, etc. Finally, there is a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Bommer products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. You can see the Bommer logo there, and right above it, it says Made in USA, a fact that Bommer is quite proud of, as am I to represent them. Any questions on the Bommer BB5044-545T-643 or any other Bommer product, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.